I couldn't help myself, guys. This is the final official in-depth Super Bowl breakdown video before we get the actual bowl games. This is the final prediction video. And guys, this is a crazy in-depth look at potential bowl games with point spreads as well. So that's why I'm kind of doing this, because it is pretty cool to see potential point spreads. Some of these games will be changing. There's a lot of things, especially all the New Year's 6 games. A lot of things up in the air. Some of the smaller games probably are confirmed at this point. A lot of teams not playing anymore. But these are the full predictions. So we're actually going to start at the top, or start kind of in the back and then go forward. So the national title prediction would be Georgia versus Michigan, and Georgia would only be a 4.5-point favorite in that game. I mean, it's probably right. It's probably right with, Michigan's performance against Ohio State and things like that. So that is interesting, but that is a potential mock game. Obviously, Georgia and Michigan will be favorites in their semifinal games. That's why it's projected they would go to the national championship. But here are the two current projected semifinal games. Georgia sitting at 13.5-point favorites over USC. If USC beats Utah, right now they're 3-point favorites in the Pac-12 championship. And then we've got Michigan, a little bit surprised here, only 5.5-point favorites over TCU. Of course, we could get a very ugly debate between Ohio State and TCU if USC wins and TCU loses against Kansas State. We will see what ends up happening there, but this is the 1v4 game. Obviously, if Georgia's the number 1 seed, they're going to pick Atlanta. Michigan takes to Arizona. They go to the desert, and they play TCU in the Fiesta Bowl. I love the way they format this. Taking a look at the Rose Bowl, this is the new projection, guys. I talked about it in my last video. Ohio State, they don't want to go to the Rose Bowl. They're pissed off. They decline it, and the Rose Bowl is like, yeah, we don't want you either. Your fan base is spoiled. You're annoying. So right now, there's not a good relationship between Ohio State and the Rose Bowl. I think the Rose Bowl is kind of arrogant. I mean, we saw how they handled the whole playoff thing. They had to make an ultimatum to get the Rose Bowl to agree to be a part of the 12-team playoff. They're a little arrogant there with the Rose Bowl officials. But either way, this is huge news for Penn State. They would be 6-point favorites over Washington. And this would be an extremely fun game. I mean, Washington is to me, it's so much better. The matchup between Penn State and Washington is just so much better than Washington and Ohio State in a game where Ohio State would be starting Kyle McCord very likely, maybe Devin Brown, but probably Kyle McCord. So Penn State, very likely going to the Rose Bowl. Congratulations. They've had such a great year, possibly taking on Washington. So Washington will make the Rose Bowl if USC wins. If USC loses, Utah goes to the Rose Bowl automatically. That is the Pac-12 Rose Bowl situation. And then if USC loses, Utah, obviously, they go to the Rose Bowl because they win the Pac-12. USC probably faces the Group of 5 team that makes the New Year's 6 Bowl. That's how that works. And then we do have the Cotton Bowl. So obviously, Tennessee fans would be very pissed off at this. Ohio State basically knocking them down because they don't want to play in the Rose Bowl, which would force Tennessee to face Tulane, and they'd be 4.5-point favorites. And the reason they would only be 4.5-point favorites is due to the quarterback situation with Hendon Hooker. They would face Tulane. Of course, Tulane has to beat UCF. They're currently 3.5-point favorites in the American Championship. The Sugar Bowl, this has been projected everywhere. Kansas State versus Alabama. A lot of unknowns in this game. Alabama's not going to be motivated. They're probably not going to be with, Bryce Young or Will Anderson. Both of those guys, top 5 picks, very likely will sit out. So you could see Kansas State maybe pulling off the upset there. But we'll see. You don't want to doubt Nick Saban even with backups. But Kansas State is a good team. And then the Orange Bowl becomes Clemson and Ohio State. The Buckeyes listed as a very early 9-point favorite in this hypothetical matchup. And that game would be Friday night. So I think that's good news for Ohio State playing Friday night. Guys, a lot of people don't know this. Ohio State has not played a bowl game in the state of Florida since 2013. If you take out the pandemic year, where they faced Alabama, where only like 5,000 people were able to go. So that would be good for Ohio State. I don't know if they would actually be 9-point favorites with Kyle McCord starting, but that is the tentative line there. I'm sure. I don't think many people would sit out for Clemson. Like DJ Uiagalelei would be playing and stuff, and Will Shipley's only a sophomore. So, could Clemson possibly? They might make that a really good game. The Cheez-It Bowl. So these are the other bowls. You've got LSU listed -6.5 versus Purdue. Of course, we'll see. How crazy would it be if Purdue goes to the Rose Bowl? It's not going to happen, but, Purdue at this point, the best team in the West, they would have a tough matchup with an LSU team who I think they were overranked, but still, to me, LSU is clearly better than Purdue. Let's be honest about that. The Relinquished Bowl would be South Carolina taking on Notre Dame. So my initial thought is I would love Notre Dame -3.5. I think it's a little up in the air because we don't know what South Carolina team we're going to get. They've showed up the past few weeks. They're inside the top 20. They're trending up with Spencer Rattler right now. And Spencer Rattler's got a ton of motivation to play well, maybe catch lightning in a bottle, and really improve his draft stock because he does have a really good arm for the NFL. The Music City Bowl, Ole Miss and Illinois. I love Illinois. Chase Brown is a beast. They've got a really good defense. Very interesting stylistic matchup. Ole Miss, more of an offensive team. Illinois, run-first defensive team. That'd be a good one, and it is a pick'em. The Arizona Bowl, you're looking at Toledo, 4-point favorites over Wyoming. I'd be up in the air about this one. I'm going to have to see how Toledo plays against Ohio in the MAC championship, the Tax Slayer, Gator Bowl, Mississippi State taking on Pittsburgh. I'd probably like Mississippi State. That's not a good line though, 3.5. But Pittsburgh, I just have major concerns about their passing offense right now. Tony the Tiger Bowl, the projection right now is UCLA and Duke, and certainly you would have to love UCLA. UCLA in other years would be in a better bowl than this, but because the Pac-12 is so deep this year, they're bumped down to this bowl, and this feels like UCLA could really, really make a statement here against a very, an opponent that is pretty much it would be a relative mismatch in my opinion. The Duke's Mayo Bowl. This is the bowl. Oh, this would be so great. This is where they dump the mayonnaise on someone and you have to bathe in the mayonnaise if you win. Iowa -2.5 versus NC State. What's the over-under on this game? 35? It might not even be 35. I would take Iowa. Iowa tends to play really well when they're facing teams that match up with them stylistically. And NC State, they're the same team as Iowa, maybe a little bit worse on defense and a little bit better on offense, but it just feels like Iowa would win that game. You've got Texas taking on Utah. This could be a New Year's Six game. Obviously, if Utah loses, they would have 4 losses. Texas already has 4 losses. But according to FPI, according to the metrics all love Texas. The metrics love Utah. So really fun matchup there in San Antonio. You've got the Cheez-It Bowl, Florida State -1 versus Oklahoma. Not sure if that line is correct. That strikes me as Florida State should probably be -6 or 7 against an Oklahoma team who has not been good and they just lost to Texas Tech. I think Oklahoma's like 7-5 or 6-6. So yeah, I don't think that line is correct. Next, we have the Pinstripe Bowl, Syracuse and Minnesota. So certainly I love Minnesota, guys, even though they can't throw. Their coaching, PJ Fleck, the running game, love me some Minnesota. Syracuse has really been trending down. Arkansas and Texas Tech, that's a fun matchup. It really is. Texas Tech -1.5. I'd probably say Arkansas wins that game outright, but they are inconsistent. And Texas Tech, they do love to run and gun. They love the high-scoring games. The Holiday Bowl, yes. North Carolina and Oregon. Higher scoring game. Higher scoring game for sure. We're going to have to see how Notre Dame, or excuse me, how North Carolina responds. They've struggled. Now they face a Clemson team in the ACC championship game. I'm up in the air in this game, but I do like Oregon. Once again, Oregon should be in a better bowl, but because the Pac-12 is so deep, they get bumped down. Next, we have Kentucky versus Oklahoma State. Kentucky listed as 1.5-point favorites. I think that's a dud matchup, personally. That's just my opinion. We've got Wake Forest and UCF. So UCF, this would be them losing the American. And guys, I love UCF, especially with a healthy quarterback, minus the 1. The Guaranteed Rate Bowl, Wisconsin listed -5 versus Kansas. How can you not love Wisconsin? With Luke Fickell now, the energy in that program, oh my goodness, it's amazing. It is amazing. Next, we have Georgia Southern taking on Buffalo. Buffalo faces Akron this week, so I'll be interested to see how they do. Georgia Southern -4.5. It feels like Georgia Southern never covers any spreads, but that's just an early spread. I'm guessing that would be a higher scoring game. Georgia Southern has a pretty good offense and a horrible defense. Next, we have the Birmingham Bowl, Missouri versus Memphis. That is a pick'em. Yeah, I would probably say Memphis in that one. Both of these teams are really inconsistent, so that becomes a tough one to pick. The First Responder Bowl, Baylor -5.5 versus Fresno. Guys, I love Fresno State. I really do. I also love Baylor, but I love Fresno State even more. Of course, Fresno State might be in an even better bowl than this if they win their conference championship game. We'll have to see. Next, the Quick Lane Bowl. Maryland 22-point favorites over Bowling Green. Yeah, I mean, honestly, you could be looking at like 56-7 or something. I think I read somewhere that Bowling Green is the second worst team to make a bowl. The only worst team is Miami of Ohio. That's what I read. This is the Hawaii Bowl. Oh, this is Christmas Eve. It's a Christmas stocking. San Diego State and Middle Tennessee. Oh my goodness. Oh, this bowl is confirmed. That's what that means. So this bowl is happening. And yeah, San Diego State has a good defense. I might have to take Middle Tennessee because it's happening on New Year's Eve. You have to factor that in, and it does change things, especially with the whole vibe and stuff like that. So I'll have to look at the metrics of that game. Next, we have SMU taking on Coastal Carolina. SMU -6. Certainly with Coastal, it's very hard. We'll have to see how they play in their conference championship game, but they are without Grayson McCall, their starting quarterback. Next, we have Houston and Louisiana. Houston -4. I love Houston. I love their offense. What can I say? Air Force and North Texas. Guys, Air Force is a really good football team. Now, we'll have to see North Texas in their conference championship game against UTSA. We'll see. But I love Air Force. But 8.5 is a lot. 8.5 is a lot. New Orleans Bowl, South Alabama -3.5 versus Western Kentucky. I love Western Kentucky. Guys, Western Kentucky in any bowl game is an auto lock, and take the over. With Austin Reed in that offense, certainly. Liberty and Ohio in the Boca Raton Bowl. So, I mean, what is going on with Liberty? We thought Liberty was good. Then they get annihilated by a horrible New Mexico State team. And then Hugh Freeze, after signing an 8-year contract extension like a month ago, says, you know what, I'm going to Auburn. So who knows what's happening with Liberty. I would have to take Ohio there. The Idaho Bowl. Yes, the Idaho Bowl. Oh my God, how did Utah State make a bowl game? I would have to pick Eastern Michigan just on principle alone. But both of those teams, my goodness. The Myrtle Beach Bowl, you have Marshall and East Carolina. Marshall, Yep. Marshall's going to win that game outright if it happens. Again, these are just predictions and predicted spreads. These are not official games. They're going to release everything on Sunday. Rice and UConn. Oh, you've got to take UConn. How did Rice make a bowl game? Goodness gracious. Florida and Oregon State. Oh, I love Oregon State, especially after they just beat Oregon. Yeah, -1. That's a really good matchup there because Florida, I got to give Florida some credit. They played well against FSU. I do have to give them credit. They did play well. FSU's a really good team. They only lost by a touchdown. Southern Miss and New Mexico State, certainly you have to take New Mexico State after their performance against Liberty in the lending trip. New Mexico State made a bowl game. Are they letting teams in with 3 wins now? Guys, I'm kidding. That was disrespectful to New Mexico State. Oh, we got the Jimmy Kimmel Bowl, the LA Bowl. This will be played in 5 layers of smog in Los Angeles. It is Washington State and Boise State. That is a fun matchup. And we'll have to see how Boise State plays in their conference championship. New Mexico Bowl, BYU, San Jose State. I love San Jose State's defense. Plus 8.5. That seems reasonable. The Fenway Bowl. Guys, this game's on at 11 a.m. And what a gut punch that would be for Cincinnati. First, Luke Fickell leaves. Then you got to play at 11 a.m. Not fun. Louisville, -2. Fun little matchup there. And then we do have the Cure Bowl. UTSA and Troy, amazing matchup. For the second, if this happens, these are projections. Amazing matchup there. UTSA really, although we'll see what happens with UTSA. Can they finish 11-2? They probably will beat North Texas. They're 8.5-point favorites. And then Troy also, they might win their conference championship, the Sun Belt. So we'll see. And then the Bahamas Bowl, this one is already confirmed. I think everyone needs to be taking UAB -12. Guys, if you look at the analytics, UAB, one of the most unlucky teams this season based on numbers, and also Miami of Ohio is horrible. So that is the super in-depth updated look with all the projected point spreads on the Bulls. These are not confirmed. We're going to have to see what happens, but this is just something interesting to look at a few days before conference championship weekend, the Friday night and the Saturday games there. So guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description. I'm, of course, the Depressed Ginger. Thank you for watching.